welcome to Wellness Watch. Today's session comes from our season 1 of Wellness Watch that was originally recorded live on our platform Learn It Live. I hope you enjoy the session today, and if you have any questions, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. Be sure to also like and subscribe to our channel so you can get more information on herbal medicine, health, and wellness from the Dancing Herbalist. Please enjoy our session today as we look at healthy sleeping habits. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Wellness Watch. I'm Jillian Karnrick, and I have Annabelle Shiver here with me.
Hi.
This week we're focusing on sleeping habits, and if you haven't yet come to one of our Wellness Watches before, it's basically an open discussion that Annabelle and I will chat throughout the class, and if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat window to the side. This is brought to you by the Dancing Herbalist. And if you don't yet know me, my name, again, is Jillian Karnrick. I have a Master of Science degree in herbal medicine. I am also a nutritionist, a certified personal trainer, and exercises medicine professional through the American College of Sports Medicine. My personal focus is on using wellness and movement-related therapies to create a more fulfilling lifestyle, and also using herbs in addition to that to bring an individual back into balance so that the wellness activities keep them healthy and happy. I do run the company, The Dancing Herbalist, which focuses on topical herbal products for joint and muscle pain, skin irritation, sensitivities, and a variety of different injuries. Do have the book, A Beginner's Guide to Wellness. If this is something you're interested in, it can be purchased right on Amazon. And if you are interested in more customized support, or if you have some questions that go beyond what we're talking about in these sessions, you can feel free to sign up for a personal consultation right at thedancingherbalist.com. There's a few other offerings we have as well at thedancingherbalist.com, and you can check these out at your own time. We may talk about a few of these later tonight. And Annabelle, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Annabelle Shiver. I'm the author of the Conscious Canary blog. I'm also a high-functioning autist, pharmaceutical injury survivor. I'm an avid plant-based food explorer and a home herbalist and health advocate, as it says.
Yeah, and if you want to talk to Annabelle a little bit more, you can use her email address that's on here, but you can also contact her through the Dancing Herbalist as well. So we're going to be talking about sleeping habits today. Now, Annabelle, first I want to just chat about what you and I do for our normal sleeping. Like, how does your life work with your sleeping? What kind of things do you do?
Well, I just have some basic nighttime routines. I tend to actually use a hot water bottle because I like to get really nice and snug and comfy.
You put that in your bed?
In my bed.
Nice.
Yes. And I don't, about an hour or so before I go to bed, I don't look at my phone. I try to go ahead and set my alarm. I don't bring a phone or anything into my bedroom with me. And I tend to do a little bit of reading at that point in time. And yeah. I don't tend to do tea because I found that I had to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Was this like a relaxing tea that you don't do, or just any tea in general?
Tea, just fluids, I think.
What time of day do you start reducing those?
I usually start reducing them around 7:30
at night.
Yeah.
What time do you generally go to bed?
Probably about 10:30. And I tend to get up a little early too. So
4 or 5 a.m. early?
About 6:30, 7 o'clock, somewhere around there.
So we have very different sleep schedules. And I think it's going to be kind of fun for us to talk about how different they are. So I know you've learned over the past year or so that it's very different when I say I got into bed versus I'm going to sleep.
Yes.
And I try to be very clear about what I'm doing when I'm doing it, because for me, I need if I'm sitting in my living room or in my office, I'm in work mode.
Right.
and I am still processing, and I haven't had that time to like decompress, so to say. So usually around 11:30 or 12 is when I will go to bed, as in I will get in bed. Sometimes I have my computer. Usually I don't have my computer though. But I usually will be on my phone for a good hour or even longer after I get into bed. Sometimes I'll read, but not very often. I do enjoy reading before bed, but it's not like my wind down activity. Um, and I do definitely have screens until like right when I'm going to sleep. And I can see that sometimes it's a real issue for me, but I have another thing that I really use to help turn my brain off to go to sleep is that I, over the past year or so, have become really invested in using ASMR to help me sleep at night.
Right.
And I have these lovely noise canceling headphones that I'll wear that really allow me to shut out the rest of the world and really allow my brain to close down. And even on nights that I'm not sleeping with those headphones on, I feel as though there's a lot coming in. I have a lot of exposure to the outside world when I'm sleeping.
Right.
My brain doesn't completely turn off.
Right.
But I feel as though when I'm listening to ASMR and I have these headphones on, my brain is really allowed to turn off. And I think it's a slightly different kind of experience. And I'm really glad that I found ASMR because it's a very unique thing. And it can make a lot of people feel uncomfortable, but there's also a lot of benefits to it. A lot of people will use it for like anxiety. But that's a little bit beyond our session. We might talk about that another session, maybe.
It'd be interesting. It's interesting because I find that, there's not only two, but two primary type of sleepers that I, experience. One is yours, or same with my partner, that can get some stimulation and it calms you down.
Yes, definitely.
Whereas I guess with the autist issues, I'm so overstimulated by the time that I can get up into my room that my partner loves having a fan on, and I'm just like, I literally cannot handle any type of vibrational sound around me. So I'm the opposite. Except I do find, those noise machines and they have the sound of the waves or something like that. If there is something going on that I need to kind of get some background noise over, I can at least fall asleep to that. But the sensory issues I have trying to go to bed I like those autist quiet rooms. Have you seen those?
The ones that actually absorb more sound than they create.
Right.
I have heard of those.
Yeah.
I would be interested if just the noise canceling headphones themselves, I mean, they're uncomfortable to sleep in. I will say that.
Right.
But without any actual sound input, because I do listen to things on them, but it still blocks additional noise. But I wonder if how you would experience that.
That'd be interesting. I also sometimes need an eye mask.
That's something that I've been considering adding to my sleeping pattern.
Well, I'll send you the link to this one because it's a beautiful, organic satin, very light, and doesn't bother you when you're sleeping. I did find that the couple that I tried, I could tell they were on my face when I was trying to rest. So I don't require them that much, but sometimes if I'm really overstimulated, the more stimulated I've been through the day, the harder it is for me to come down.
Yeah.
And they can help.
I really think that it's not something I've heard other people talking about, but I think there's a real concept of, we have 5, 6, or 7 senses, depending on how you describe your senses. And which one of those we need more support individually to relax and calm before we go to bed. Because there's also eye pillows.
Oh, right.
Because so some pressure on your eyes, if your eyes are constantly thinking and looking and you have to actually relax your eyes and stop looking and things. I imagine for someone that looks at screens a lot that might be be beneficial. Now for me, because I happen to sleep on my stomach, it would not work for me.
Right.
But and those you can add herbs to and things like that for aromatherapy, and I think that's really nice too. Because some people need relaxing smells. So you might have like scented pillow things to put under your pillows, or if you have a diffuser in your room. That's a big one. I think for me, my sleep quality is greatly improved if I have a humidifier going in my room.
I was just wondering how you feel about that.
For me, especially at this time of year in the winter months, I feel for me, it's definitely necessary. I remember 2-3 years ago, I went to Colorado and we had a ridiculous 2 days of nonstop driving to get there from Maryland. And I mean, I actually drove from Vermont, so it was even worse. But I remember I was so dehydrated, and it took me days to get rehydrated to actually get good quality sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And I think if the air around me is very dry, even if I'm not dehydrated, or if I am dehydrated, it doesn't matter. If the air around me is dry, I feel as though like almost have some level of like a hangover when I wake up. I just feel like slightly groggy. Yeah. How about you and humidifiers?
Well, I actually keep a humidifier of a sort in my room because I have a big glass baking dish that I put on top of my radiator, and I keep it there. And I have to do that, otherwise it's just way too dry. Even for something like my skin hurting.
So yeah.
Just, you need to be feeling comfortable in order to lay down and go to sleep. So, and our daytime habits, of course, contribute to that as well.
Definitely, like I was saying, staying hydrated is a huge thing for me. But then you do have that challenge if you're drinking too late at night. For some individuals, that means they're going to wake up in the middle of the night needing to go to the bathroom and being unable to fall back asleep. If you can fall back asleep, that's great. Drink later in the evening, just go to the bathroom and go back to sleep.
One of the things, that I really focus on during the day, which has really seemed to help me, which I've just naturally been focusing on as I'm going through recovery, is adrenal support. Because, I mean, obviously dehydration hits the adrenals. I find whenever my adrenals get hit, if I have a very physiological stress response, in autism world, people understand that, the meltdowns or things of that nature.
So for individuals who don't know adrenal response, that's just generally when you're having stress.
Right.
I mean, for an average person, we thrive on stress. That's how our body is designed. But if we always have stress, then we have too much cortisol in our bodies. And cortisol is really involved in the chemical balance of our sleep.
Right, very much so. Well, and it factors into our insulin levels during the day when we're eating. So I find that one thing that has helped me is learning a lot about adrenal wellness, and really supporting my adrenals through the day, and then I can go to sleep and I can sleep well through the night. But if not, it's definitely an issue.
So let's talk a little bit about the circadian rhythm thing. Sorry, I was looking to see what our next class is, because I was thinking we might be doing stress next, but we're not.
Okay.
I thought we were, but we're not. So our cortisol levels rise in the morning. And throughout the day, our cortisol levels are supposed to get lower. And in the evening, our melatonin levels are supposed to be high. And throughout the night, the melatonin levels lower. So melatonin and cortisol are exactly opposite of each other. And they're what set up our sleep cycle. This is why a lot of people supplement with melatonin at night to get to sleep at night. But if your cortisol levels are still high at night, your melatonin is only going to do so much.
Right.
You gotta lower your stress hormones. So cortisol being the primary stress hormone of the body.
Right.
And I know for me, the ASMR is a great evening stress reliever. It's very calming to my mind. A lot of people do meditation.
I like meditation, and I like restorative yoga. Or yin yoga, which I've recently discovered, and I think talking about it every one of my
every
talks.
week we're talking about yin yoga.
But it's definitely a nice gentle approach. So I mean, those cortisol levels are there during the day, so we have energy during the day. That's when we're supposed to be burning out energy.
Exactly.
So,
and this is one that not a lot of people think about, but another great way to reduce your cortisol levels at night, it's not going to work great for you, Annabelle, but is exercise. Because exercise because the whole fight or flight mechanism uses up our cortisol. We are in a state of stress. Our body, our muscles and everything uses up that cortisol to put out energy to exercise. So even just a little bit of exercise, I did talk about this last week or the week before, I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember that. Jumping jacks.
It's just doing 5 or 6 jumping jacks or whatever. It's not, it moves the blood from it moves the blood away from your mind and into your body, so your mind can relax better. It's also using up a little bit of that cortisol that you've got left from the day. And so it's doing so many things to get that just a little bit of exercise in the evening. If you're doing more exercise in the evening, that does a better job of getting rid of the cortisol. Just in general, exercise is a really good method of reducing cortisol. But a tiny, tiny bit right before bed moves the blood a little bit faster, and that's really a helpful thing for sleep support.
I would think so. I mean, I went decades and decades with really, really intense insomnia, which I used pharmaceuticals for decades, and for panic attacks, anxiety attacks, those cortisol surges. So I've really learned a lot about changing my lifestyle, in the sense, like I used to fall asleep in front of the TV or have the news on, just things that in my deeper part of my psyche are creating stress. They're creating stress for me. I wasn't giving myself the environment to actually rest in. And that in order for the body to properly detoxify, which all of our bodies have to do, you have to be at a state of rest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason we sleep, is to clean and repair our body.
Right.
That's the reason we do it. And it's not like it's just our mind, it's our whole body. I mean, our muscles need the time to use proteins to incorporate into new muscle fibers. Our digestive system needs the time to slough off its old cells and grow new cells when we don't have any food there. Our brain needs the time to regenerate nerve paths. Our lymphatic system and our circulatory systems need the time to filter all of our blood in our liver and our kidneys to actually get out of those toxins. And this goes back, we're always going to talk about poop every class. This goes back to that whole having a bowel movement first thing in the morning idea. And that's oddly part of our whole body's rhythm, or it should be. So if you're having a healthy everything, you should have a pretty consistent bowel movement first thing in the morning. Some people use coffee to stimulate this. I am in debate whether I think that's good or bad, but I think it's better to have a bowel movement than no bowel movement.
I think that's true. However, this is an interesting point you bring up, because I've really, of course, been back and forth on this particular subject. I know a lot of people that use stimulants
to create a bowel movement.
To create a bowel movement. Yep. And just for energy alone, so for adrenals and for creating a bowel movement. So
now, would this for the adrenals have a cortisol increasing or a cortisol decreasing effect?
It should be increasing. I mean, I think that it's it's artificially increasing,
Okay.
if you will, even though we know coffee is not artificial,
Yes.
but it acts as a stimulant on those glands. And when you are constantly going to basically a third party to get the stimulation, your body tissues become weak because they don't remember how to function on their own.
This is exactly what melatonin supplementation does as well.
Absolutely. This is why I'm not a supplementer, as you know.
The only thing I supplement with is vitamin D. And
Right.
there's no other way to get vitamin D in the quantities that you need for anxiety and depression that people have these days in
Right.
the winter without supplementation. You cannot get it from food. It's way too much food. You can get small amounts from food, not
Right.
the big quantities.
And you have to do yourself really good whenever the sun's in position.
Oh, yes.
So you can store some of that to help you get through a little bit of the winter.
And I personally have been wondering if the reason we're starting to see, I know this is really off topic from sleep, but one of the reasons I think that we're starting to see anxiety and depression in children younger and younger is because of screens and televisions and computers and not
Absolutely.
getting outside in the summer and playing like we used to. I mean,
Absolutely.
I am right at that age where screens became important to everybody when I was in high school.
Right.
And
I mean, we do have a bit of an age gap.
we do. I mean, it's not too bad, too different,
Right.
but
I mean,
enough.
we didn't have any of this type of.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had that. But people younger than me, everyone screens their whole time growing up.
Right,
For
they're
me,
looking at a
screens were
phone.
like right in high school was when they became the thing. But in high school, we would still go play outside. So I was that right midpoint. And it was around high school and college when I was having to do more and more assignments indoors for studying that I was finding that I was getting low-level anxiety and depression because I was starting to use up all my vitamin D stores. And I just was never really able to catch back up with it.
And then when we factor in that, I always go to this point because it's so crucial. So of course we have these hormones that we're talking about. We also have magnesium levels. But when we talk about depression and insomnia, it's really important to see if you're utilizing calcium. It doesn't mean that you're taking in calcium. It means, are you utilizing calcium? And so
how does one know?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you would be suffering from depression. You would have insomnia. You would have brittle bones. You would have bone density issues. I mean, there's really a host of things, but in particular, depression. So,
Bone density is a whole big
right.
dilemma that's well beyond our talk today.
But it's interesting because it goes back to our daily habits. So if you're eating foods that block enzymes, you're not going to get the correct amount of trace minerals, which is the hydration that we need. So
also, if you're eating foods that are slowing your digestion and absorption in general,
which is another thing at night, I tend to eat my heaviest meal at night. People say do it in the morning, but I'm opposite.
I tend to go midday for my heaviest meal.
But I don't eat fat during the day, so it's always heavier at night for me.
Versus I tend to get more of my fats first thing in the morning because I guess I do also supplement with flaxseed oil because my skin is very sensitive to everything. So I do have that as well. And I get extra flaxseed oil first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. And for me, if I'm not properly hydrated and if my air isn't properly hydrated at night while I'm sleeping, I may wake up with very dry skin, like my whole body. So getting that extra oil in the morning means that at least throughout the day, my skin is working on repairing.
Right.
Because I need that awake time to digest the fats versus for me, I have a harder time digesting the fats in the evening.
Yeah, it definitely has helped my sleep to do my fatty meal at night. Except I did find there was a couple of things. I don't eat nuts and seeds much right now, But I did have a couple of times when I ate a handful of nuts or something, thinking, oh, this is my, nighttime fat, and it would be something that would stimulate me. Would kind of the GABA receptors would be activated, and I'd be like, oh man, shouldn't have had those whatevers. For me, it was walnuts, which is interesting because walnuts usually promote sleep.
This may be a special case for you, Annabelle, when it comes to the walnuts and stimulating you. And the reason I'm just thinking that because in my mind, walnuts are specifically, the fat in walnuts specifically target the brain.
Right.
There's this whole doctrine of signatures that things look like in some fashion what they're supporting. And so the walnuts, then they look very much like a brain. So they're supporting the brain. Now there's more to it than that, but that's just one casual way to think about it because of the essential fatty acids that are in walnuts. And because you have such a hard time absorbing and utilizing fats and proteins, it may be taking more energy for your body to incorporate those into your brain. And with your brain focusing on incorporating these fats and proteins in a way it's not used to, that may be stimulating your brain function, allowing you not to calm and sleep.
Right.
And this may not be the case for everyone.
I really don't think it is. It's quite interesting. And I mean, we could go off on a thing, but I don't know. Obviously, having brain injury, things of that nature, could just impact the way that things hit the central nervous system or the autonomic nervous system. But I just think it's, it goes back to you have to know your body.
Yes.
You have to know what helps you rest. One of the things that really helps me rest, which makes, no sense to most people around me, is Sudoku puzzles. Did I say that correctly?
Sudoku. Yeah.
So it's interesting because you would think that'd be something that would really get your brain activated doing number puzzles.
I understand why it wouldn't be for because I am also a numbers person. I like numbers. And if you're sitting and thinking of numbers all day, going down to just 9 numbers. And they all fit in their own particular place.
They're very tidy.
And they're always going to be correct.
Right.
It can be very relaxing and organizing your brain versus having 5 or 10 different things you're thinking about.
Right.
Just allowing it to come all together and be centered and focused on something.
A monofocus, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I find also that the exercising of the brain, it's almost like how you talk about getting up and doing some jumping jacks. I almost need to just get the rest of that energy used up for the day, So actually a little bit of stimulation in that regard really calms and relaxes me. And I've always had a thing with numbers. So I just personally find numbers to be comforting.
I also like numbers.
Yeah. So again, it goes to that, you have to know yourself. But if you're not sleeping well, I mean, at any time I go through periods of time that I'm not sleeping well, I have to really ask myself, like, what am I doing that's getting in my way here? Having a wacky sleep pattern is, something that I just really cannot respond to. So I tend to try, and we're talking about circadian rhythm, I tend to try to stay on a cycle because if I'm up super late one night and then I'm, bed early the other night, my body and brain just don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I seem to work best going to bed sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. But even on my own, I will wake up around 8 o'clock, even if I go to bed at 2 a.m.
Right.
So sometimes I might be able to convince my body to sleep in until 9, but then my cat wakes me up. So it's not, I don't get very far in that. But I do tend to feel more rested. And even if I go to bed earlier, let's say I go to bed at 10, and I wake up at 7, so it's actually getting more sleep. I don't feel as well rested.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been trying to get myself on a legit circadian rhythm. So that's been something that's been a little challenging for me because I tend to go to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock, sometimes midnight if I'm really pushing the midnight oil, so to speak. But I do the same thing. I mean, I wake up around the same time. And my whole goal was that in between 9 and 11 o'clock, from what I understand, is whenever the brain can do most of its healing. If you go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't know how I could go to bed around 9 o'clock, but I keep trying to go to bed earlier.
There was one summer, it was when I was working on my capstone project in college, that I completely reversed my sleep schedule. I would go to bed around 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oof.
And wake up a little after sunset.
Oh, that's hard.
It felt so good for me because my mind was able to focus when it was dark outside on the work that I had to do.
Instead of distractions.
Because there were no distractions.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it was then great because I could go grocery shopping first thing in the morning, right before I went to bed. But what I put up on the computer here that you folks can't see, it is the Chinese body clock. So in the Chinese system, there are 5 elements. And if you want to learn more about this, we're going to be having an herbal philosophy class. It's going to be starting in a few months. You can find that on Learn It Live. But in the Chinese system, there are 5 elements, and each element, except for fire, has 2 organs associated with it. Now, these are Chinese organs. They are not the physical organ of the body. It's very important to remember that, because Annabelle's looking at this now, and I don't know if you've seen this before, but in the Chinese philosophical system of medicine, the organs have an action, they don't have the physical structure. So while the heart is associated with blood circulation, it is not necessarily the physical heart. It can also be the musculature associated with the veins throughout the entire body.
Right.
So it has some things. Now, each organ in the Chinese system has a certain 2-hour period of the day. So in general, if you are, my experience is if you are having a hard time sleeping consistently at the same time at night, there is an imbalance in that Chinese organ system. So for me, this is the time period that I have trouble with, and I know it.
And
so that's your trouble period.
Metabolic balancing.
There we go. So Annabelle's trouble period that she's pointing out to me is from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. And in the Chinese system, this is the pericardium and the triple burner. This is just generally the metabolic system. So the whole processing of everything that comes into our body. And for me, I have a hard time sleeping from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. So I generally need to fall asleep not during the first portion of that, but during the second portion. So for me, you can see it has the sleep areas listed here, but generally that's issues with the gallbladder and liver. So that's detoxifying in fats, cellular repair, and detoxifying the blood and things like that. And I know that those are the main issues I have because the liver and gallbladder are also associated with the skin. And I've always had very big issues with my skin. So you can see if you haven't looked up just the Chinese body clock, this is something you can look up. Just remember they are not technically the physical organs. These are more the idea of the organs when you go do look at this to see if they kind of show up and line up with your sleep challenges as well. I think it's a fascinating thing. And if you want, this is, we might not talk specifically about the Chinese body clock, but we will be talking about the different elements and the organs in the philosophy class that's going to be starting in a few months. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's definitely something I've gotten better at, working at trying to establish a circadian rhythm. Of course, in the wintertime, it's harder because normally what I like to do is wake up, do a, a warm up, so to speak, a shower, what have you, and then go for a walk. I like to do my walks in the morning, but when it's really cold out, it doesn't even get the warm part of the day till the afternoon.
Well, we have 2 weeks till daylight savings time ends. And so for me, I think this is the ideal time of the year to reset our circadian rhythms. If that's something that you feel as though is important to you, to get yourself on a consistent sleep schedule. I mean, really, it's all about changing our stress, giving us more energy. I mean, if you are just sleeping the same time every day, regardless of when it is, that itself is going to give you more energy. Changing it is what drags you down. But I think I like resetting my circadian sleep schedule right now, mostly by using the sun. I mean, that's really what our bodies are intended to do, is to sleep according to the sun. Be awake when the sun is up and go to sleep when the sun is down, which is great when you can have like 13, 14-hour naps in the winter.
Speaking, I was going to wonder about naps. Do you like taking naps during the day?
Why don't we come back to that? We'll talk a little bit more about waking up.
Yeah.
Maybe. But because we have 2 weeks until daylight savings time, and now not everyone does daylight savings time. We just happen to here in Maryland. And so I like to make sure that I keep my blinds open in my room. A lot of people really don't like this. And I think it's a great way to encourage yourself to wake up with the sun first thing in the morning. And I know if it was warmer here, if I live further south and I wanted to reset my circadian rhythms, one of the first things I would do would be go camping. And staying in a tent itself just gives you more sun exposure first thing in the morning to encourage you to wake up. And if you're consistently waking up, I think that is one of the strongest ways to reset your circadian rhythms. It doesn't matter when you go to bed. If you are consistent with when you wake up, your bedtime will naturally adjust itself.
Yeah, and I do the same thing with my blinds, because it's actually the dawn is what wakes me up.
Yep.
When the approach of the sun, which I love, because the morning time as the sun is coming up is usually when I'm doing my singing meditation and things of that nature.
It's lovely.
Watching the sun come up. So then I can kind of switch over, through the rest of the day. But it all comes down to a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Now, naps. I'm not against naps. Naps destroy my sleep schedule.
Yes.
But I am still not against them. What I need to do when I allow myself to nap is still be solid on when I am waking up in the morning. So, because I work a part-time job on the weekends, just doing some extra things, I get to that job at 8 in the morning on the weekends. And I am not a person that is always used to being on my feet, constantly walking around, but at this job I am. So often when I get home around 3 or 4, I will take a nap. Depending on how tired I am, that may mean I am not waking up until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I will make sure that I get up and I am then active. I use my brain, I use my muscles, I allow my body to function and be fully awake. So that way I can hopefully still fall back asleep eventually, but I wake back up at that same time in the morning.
Right.
Making sure that even if I don't get enough sleep, then I still gotta get up and go.
Right.
Because otherwise my sleep schedule is going to be off for many, many days. It may mean that I go to sleep a little bit earlier that next night, but I need to get up consistently at the same time in the morning.
Yeah, naps definitely can destroy my sleep schedule. They're necessary for me as I've gone through a heavy detoxification program. So I let my body rest as much as it wants to. But even if I'm not, now that I do have some energy level back, if I don't actually need a nap during the day, because I used to do something called forced rest. I used to sleep for almost 2 hours a day. You remember, I was like between 1 and 3. And that would kind of made it difficult for me to get a really good deep sleep at night. So what I like to do is, even if I'm not going to take a nap, try to take a little bit of a timeout and just let my mind rest. Otherwise, what I find is that I get into the early evening and I get burnout. You know, back whenever I need to be back to doing dinner and, you know, other activities, like I'm burnout. I can't do anything. So even if I don't take a nap, which I don't really like doing, I don't tend to wake feeling rested from naps. I tend to feel like more groggy.
I do have that experience often with naps, and I think a lot of that for me is the time displacement,
right?
Of waking up when all of a sudden it is dark, because I have a tendency to sleep right through sunset. When I'm taking a nap, that tends to be the time period, and I'm really curious what's going on the Chinese body clock at that time. So that's bladder and kidneys area time period. That's interesting.
It is.
So just it's another detoxification system of the body along with the liver and gallbladder. And I actually compare those a lot. So that's something I should contemplate for a little bit.
So what about do you use any? Well, I said I didn't like drinking tea at night. If I'm really in a pinch, I will, you know, have an herbal tea, but a tincture at night, I think usually is my preference.
I tend to go with a tincture at night. I do actually have some other herbal blends that I use that are either tablets or honey blends as well. I was really worried the first time I had the honey blend right before sleep, because I was concerned that the sweetness of the honey would be too stimulating right before going to bed. I mean, when I'm talking about right before bed, I mean like get into bed, take the honey, fall asleep. I mean like immediate. And I did not have those issues with honey as I was expecting.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because the very last thing I do before I go to bed is take a spoonful of honey.
Why is that?
Because it releases melatonin.
Oh.
And it helps the liver detoxify while you're sleeping.
Well, this makes so much more sense now. Things I didn't know about honey.
That's actually what was one of the able to go to sleep.
So I think like maybe instead of tea, just like hot water with some honey. I wanted to say lemon, but I don't think no lemon for me. Just hot water and honey. Maybe a blueberry or two or something like that. Just a little something.
And if I'm really struggling with, like, there have been times where I've just gotten hungry, and I've gotten hungry to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot go to sleep unless I eat something, because, you know, I mean, my stomach is just like growling and growling. And so the honey actually helped me in that area as well.
Oh, great.
It would help me get through the evening without having another meal. But, you know, I love bananas. And at night, if I really need something to fill me up, and that's going to also not overstimulate me, it's starchy, essential fatty acids in the banana. Bananas, then one of my other go-tos. I'll just have a little small banana puree or something. But I don't tend to eat at night. It's only if it's in a pinch.
I agree. I always am worried about eating right before I go to bed. I mean, I probably eat a little bit later than the average person for dinner. I probably eat around maybe like 7:30 or 8 on an average night. So because I do also stay up later, and sometimes I'll be awake until 2, sometimes I am hungry, and I don't want to eat that because I know I'm not going to digest the food well. I know I'm not going to absorb the nutrients well. I mean, it's just extra stuff in my body that I don't need.
Right.
And when I think, it's a little bit of a difference, but when I think of foods to help people sleep, I think of cereal.
Mm.
And a funny thing happened maybe about 10 to 15 years ago. There was an interesting transition where cereal companies, like a standard GMO cereal company, not the nice organic-y ones that we eat from now, but the standard ones, they started making commercials about eating cereal before bed.
Like grape nuts. That was one of the big ones I remember.
Many different cereal companies started doing this.
And they would have warm milk, I remember they would do.
And there's an interesting reason why. Because for most people, gluten makes you tired.
Absolutely. I mean, for some people, it makes you violently ill.
Yes, there's many other.
Part of that violently ill is being very tired.
Yeah. So for some individuals, if you are sensitive to gluten in that fashion, you could consider using it as a medicinal benefit. Just a small amount. I mean, we're not talking a whole meal here, but just that slight, I need a little bit extra to go to sleep. I don't have melatonin that I take every night, kind of thing.
Right.
So that could be something someone could consider.
It makes perfect sense to me because with gluten sensitivity, one of the things that happens if I have gluten is I have days and days of brain fog. So it's, it just takes that to an incredible extreme. So I can see it being, I mean, breads and pastas, people talk about how, I remember when I used to have a job and I used to go down to this diner and I'd get a hamburger and a sandwich and fries and stuff for lunch. And I would come back and I'd be like, I need someone to brew a pot of coffee because I can't stay awake.
Exactly, yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. But once you get, for me, I found that once I got on that regular cycle, that regular pattern, then I didn't have that issue. And the honey definitely helped the appetite because right before bed, I might have that little pinch of like, I'm a tiny bit hungry. And taking a scoopful of honey, I usually take the enriched stuff that's the propolis, royal jelly, bee pollen, and all that. But then, I've got something, it somehow tricks my brain into thinking that it's full too, so I lose the hunger. So honey's been my go-to at night consistently for a while. Which is funny because I thought the same thing. I was like, man, if I take this spoonful of honey, I'm going to be zinging, I'm going to be like on a sugar high.
Yeah, no, I find it fascinating that honey really doesn't seem to do that.
Right.
But I imagine maple syrup would not be as supportive as honey in that fashion. No. And all the other sweetener sources.
Right.
But we were talking about we're getting to talk about herbs and talk about teas before bed. When I tend to use herbs before bed, I primarily, again, will use tinctures. So I do have some blends of honey that I have. The honey blend that I have comes from Mockingbird Meadow Farms. It's a company that I really like. They're a small town company. You can find them online. And they have herbal honey blends, not just sleep ones, but they have a lot of different herbal honeys. And I really like a lot of their products. They have more than just herbal honeys. But for me, the herb that I really always reach for is skullcap. So in general, different herbs will target and will support you falling asleep in different methods. Just like I was saying, like depending on which of our senses we need to kind of calm down for sleep, might depend on what you do for your sleep relaxation activities. Skullcap is the same way. Skullcap is really when you can't stop thinking about everything. If you've got 10 things on your to-do list, 50 things on your to-do list.
Right.
You forgot to feed the cat. Like if you got like so many things going through your brain as you're trying to sleep, that's what skullcap really helps to like calm down, versus there are other herbs that will really help to relax your muscles if you feel so you need to keep moving. Or
for me, one is
pain. Yes, those,
turning down inflammation. There's times whenever, that's another reason I really love the heated water bottle in bed. But sometimes at night I take ginger tincture.
There you
go. Just because, I've got to be able to be in enough,
overcome the pain, right, so your brain can turn off.
Right. So, and it just kind of depends. I mean, I don't always require that. But if I do, ginger is something I'm not afraid. I take ginger pretty regularly and I take it through the day. But I'm not too nervous to have
about
more
it being
ginger.
Stimulating.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely have the issue with some herbs being too stimulating for me to sleep. I've recently found that for me, reishi is just as stimulating as coffee.
I can see that.
So I have to stop having reishi very early in the day. If I'm going to have any reishi, it needs to be very early. But then again, usually when I'm having reishi, it's mixed with chocolate. So there's a little bit of caffeine in there too. But still, it's a very stimulating herb for me.
Right.
I
liked dandelion leaf for just for the reduction in anxiety and stress. But dandelion leaf being a diuretic, I found that meaning I was going to pee all night long. I was like, oh, this is not going to work because I feel calm and I don't feel anxious, but now I have to pee several times through the night. I have to wake up. So, so I use dandelion leaf now, in the morning versus later in the evening. And what I have learned with pharmaceutical injury recovery is that having been on medications that impact the GABA receptors, some of the herbs like chamomile or valerian that are supposed to be calming can hit me neurologically the opposite way, and they can be incredibly hyperstimulating.
You feel that way with chamomile?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I personally would assume that chamomile would be a good herb for you before going to bed. I mean, chamomile, when I think of it doing three things very well. It helps to calm the mind so you can sleep. It stimulates digestion to actually break down your foods a little more. It's also a good anti-inflammatory. So it's a little bit of a bitter. That's how it acts for the digestive system. So I would assume with eating more fats in the evening and focusing on digesting and absorbing while you're sleeping, having your larger meal in the evening, having a level of pain that could be supported with the anti-inflammatory actions, and then the mentally calming effects of chamomile, it would seem to be a reasonable herb for you to use.
And it's interesting because as you go through something like recovery, especially from brain injury, it changes. I mean, there's many things I couldn't tolerate before that I can tolerate now. So I tend to go back and try them on and off and see how I do in small doses. But I did find that it was stimulating to my brain.
Yeah.
And I would lie there and my body would be at rest, but my mind would still be going and going and going and almost like not falling asleep at all.
That's when you mix in a little bit of skullcap,
which would be perfect. So maybe the chamomile skullcap would be the combo.
That might be the combo. Now for me, when I combine skullcap with things, I tend to combine it with St. John's wort.
Which I've not tried.
And primarily for me, skullcap is not an herb I just use for sleep. It is an herb that I will use throughout the day. Interestingly, a few weeks ago when I was over at your place,
I remember.
I had too much coffee that day. And
some power, some skullcap.
I just needed something to turn my body off. Basically, I was jittery, I was anxious, And I just had too much coffee that day. And I went for Skullcap was what I went for. And I was so surprised at how fast and well it reversed my too much coffee symptoms, because I had never had too much coffee and tried to fix it before.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
definitely an herb that I use consistently throughout the day when I am using it. But combined with St. John's wort, it does a really good job of working on all of those bad thoughts that are in our head. Because Skullcap's a lot about the thoughts that are in our head. But St. John's wort we know St. John's wort is supported for the neurological system. And a lot of people like to use it for depression. Mm-hmm. So combining it with Skullcap really does a good job of getting the bad thoughts out of the head, is what I like to think of.
That's really interesting.
So when I have forgotten to take my vitamin D, and I have forgotten that vitamin D solves this for me, and I don't need to take herbs, so if I'm taking vitamin D, the Skullcap St. John's wort combination is also supportive for the same issues for me.
That's a good point. And I think I need to add Skullcap at night, especially whenever part of my plant-based diet is that I eat mostly raw foods. Mm-hmm. And whenever I go a longer period of time where I consume just raw foods, primarily fruit, I have a lot of energy, but almost to the point where it's like, okay, come on now. It's 10:30 at night. It is now time to start coming down. And I just have such high vibrational energy that I have a hard time falling asleep. That's when I go through an increase, or when I switch something up in my diet. I usually have a 3-day to week-long period of a surge of energy that I almost can't come down from.
Now, I know you have the intention of removing fats from your diet as well.
Right.
And I'm wondering if, while you are on this very intense raw diet, if having your larger meal midday would be better for that energy spike.
It might be. Yeah, I've really toyed with that notion. So, and plus it'll help keep me full a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I've definitely considered that. Once I switch over, every time I switch up or whatever, I have to alter how I'm doing things. So I think that's a good suggestion. I even eat heavy in the afternoons now. Mm-hmm. I mean, eating a plant-based diet, at times it can be hard to feel full. So I definitely like my salads have gotten bigger in the afternoons, So, and it doesn't hurt that I found one that I'm in love with. And, it's like every day I'm like, oh man, I just really want that same salad repetitively. But I think that's great about St. John's wort. I've not tried it. And,
you mean Skullcap?
No, about when you were talking about the combination. The bad thoughts.
Yeah. A lot of people will use St. John's wort for depression. I think it definitely is a person-specific herb for that, and it definitely needs to be combined with other herbs that make it work more effectively for an individual. I don't think it's an herb that really should be used solely by itself, because it does need higher dosages if you do that, and I don't think everyone's going to get the effects that they want from it. Right. Because there's so many other things that go into play with it, so many nutritional needs, and sleep needs and everything. Especially, we were talking about stress and sleep, but anxiety and depression are majorly related to sleep. I mean, you need sleep to feel safe and supported in your body, and if you have too much stress, you're not going to be able to feel safe and supported in your own body. So it's a huge cyclical thing, and that's where using herbs to support sleep can be really helpful.
Right. One of my big things is meditation, even though I do that in the morning, in the evening. And one of my favorite meditations, whenever I'm having a lot of thoughting, is what I call it, like way too much thoughting going on, is I go into a meditation where I'm at a table in a room, and there's a front door and a back door, and I'm at a table, and my thoughts come in, and they go from the front door out the back door, and none of them come and sit down at the table with me. I just begin to be able to watch them pass. It's almost like counting sheep. So, and it really works because I don't attach to any thoughts. I use that approach throughout my life and through the day, where I'm very selective about the thoughts that I bring to my table to have tea with.
There you go.
You know?
So I've been doing a process over the past few years now with my chakra meditations. And if you or anyone else wants to read more about what I've been doing with that, they are on the Dancing Herbalist blog, which is the dancingherbalist.wordpress.com. And I do expect to have another one posted very soon for that. But it's basically been using mantras to reorganize my brain processes of how I experience the world. And so when I'm feeling in a place that I feel uncomfortable in one of those situations of how I've been working on my chakras, just repeating those mantras over and over again helps me bring myself back into my body, into a safe, secure place, because I have aligned my thought process to those mantras already. So I can use those and just repeat them a few times, and I'm again solving the issues that I've already processed, and I can bring myself back into place. And I have been using those on occasion to fall asleep as well.
Nice.
So that can be a supportive time.
Mantras are
when
lifesavers.
you learn how to use them and you're consistent with them, and once they've become part of you,
they're very grounding.
They're always part of you.
Yeah. So that's one of the things instead of having tea with any particular thoughts, I just let them go on.
So we've come to the end of our talk today, Annabelle. So we're going to be wrapping it up now. And was there any other big things you want to talk about when it comes to sleeping habits?
No, just I'm really looking forward to taking a hot shower and going to sleep.
Yeah. So we are trying some different times for the Wellness Watch. Try a few different times. So for the next few weeks, we are going to be having our sessions at 7 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time. But then we'll be going back to the afternoon after that for a little bit. So we'll be all over the place, but if you have any time preferences or when you'd like to see these live, feel free to let us know. Next week, we are going to be talking about healthy body flora.
Yay.
So now, for the individuals listening now, this is not going to be just digestive flora. So we're going to talk about the whole body and the flora of the whole body. So it's going to be kind of a fun talk. We're going to get, I don't know what, bacteria-y. I don't know.
We're gonna get dirty.
Clean and dirty. There we go. That's exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions after our session today, feel free to join us over at the Facebook group for the Dancing Herbalist Herbies. You can see that link right on here. And again, you can check out our other classes that are on Learn It Live. Check out the products we have for the Dancing Herbalist, and also check out our newsletter as well. We will be sending out a newsletter in a few days. So I hope you all have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next week for Wellness Watch.
All right, good night.
Good night. Sleep well.